What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Josh. This is OverladningNow, and behind me, I'm finally ready to reveal the custom bed setup we did in our 2022 Ram Power Wagon. This process is not a small task. It took a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of energy to build a custom camper setup in the bed of our truck. There are multiple reasons why we did this, and today what I want to do is talk through the components, talk through all of the things that I did and how I was able to achieve this, and then go through some of the drawbacks, because this is not perfect. This is the first time I've ever done this, and although it works, there are some things that I would like to change, and I am going to change. But before I make any changes and we talk about that, what I want to do is just go through the entire system, how I built it, how much it cost to build, how easy or hard it was. And in retrospect, I wish I would have filmed more of the process. I tried to, but when you're building something for the very first time, also trying to manage a camera and get the right angles, it really throws the whole process off. And this took quite a while. So we're going to talk about all the pros, all the cons, and everything that I think you should know before you take on building your own custom camper setup. Stay tuned. So before we get started, I would like to shamelessly plug ourselves. If you guys are not following us on Instagram, I will put our Instagram right here. And if you are interested in photography, landscape photography, outdoor photography, storm chasing, all of that stuff, I will also put our photography-centric Instagram right here, so you can follow us along for that. Now, with the custom camper setup, now building a camper inside the back of your truck is no small task. And this process for us was done over about a 3-week time frame. Now, the issue with that is I was intending to go on a trip at the very end of that 3 weeks. I thought 3 weeks would be plenty of time, but when things start to pile up in your different tasks with your water, your power, everything that you're trying to accomplish, it becomes a little difficult to make sure you're managing that time appropriately. And that was the problem that I had. So in this custom camper setup, what we have is a 20-gallon onboard water tank with a water pump, and that is attached to the faucet, which we have for taking showers, cleaning dishes, whatever we need to do with that 20 gallons of water. We also have 200 amp hours of lithium iron phosphate batteries. That does come with a 1,000-watt inverter, a solar charge controller, a fused panel system, a Bluetooth control module to turn on all of the various items inside the truck. So there was a lot to this, and this is the first time that I had ever gotten into like a full onboard power system. But I was able to do that for much cheaper than what you can purchase full onboard power systems for if you have another company install them. So our power system is where I want to start. So I'm going to kind of walk you through how our power system is wired, how it's set up, and then we can kind of talk through the different components that I have. Now, I'm going to try to put all of these components in the description with links so you can purchase them if you're trying to do something similar. And then after we get done with the power, we'll go to the water system. That's a very simple explanation, and we'll talk through the rest of the build and how I used 80/20 extruded aluminum for the entire frame of this truck camper. All right, so for our power system, I want to keep this relatively simple. This is not me going to go through how we installed every single component within our battery system. But the base of the system is a set of 2 lithium iron phosphate 100 amp hour batteries. I purchased those from the Battery Clearinghouse, and I'll put that link in the description so you can at least check them out. They were each $350. So it was $700 total for just the batteries themselves, which is much cheaper than bigger brand batteries that I was not willing to pay until I had a good idea of the power consumption and what it was that I was actually going to need. And everyone needs to understand that you're not going to know what you need until you're out there and you're living out of your vehicle. And once you get to that point, you will see all of the points of weakness as well as everything that is working flawlessly that you do not need to touch. Now that we're back and we're home, there is a whole revamp that I'm going to have to do, because while we were traveling, trying to keep those batteries charged did become extremely labor intensive. And that was not by design, obviously, but it's something that I am contending with now, and how am I going to make this better? So I have a couple of solutions, and we'll kind of go over the problem so you know what I did wrong. But what we had when we took off was a 100 watt Ram Power solar panel. My interpretation of this was the 200 amp hours of lithium iron phosphate batteries was going to be enough to power this system for several days. And it was, but I was running the refrigerator off of AC power, not DC, because I did not have a DC plug for this. In retrospect, that's what caused my biggest issue, is this refrigerator was drawing tons of power simply because I was running it off of AC versus DC. So it had to make that conversion through the inverter from DC to AC to power the refrigerator. And although that doesn't seem like much, you lose power in that conversion. And that is what I learned ultimately, was through that conversion, that I was killing that battery bank with just the refrigerator. Now, the ways that we charge it, when we left, we had a trickle charger that we could plug into the outlet over here on the Power Wagon. Well, that trickle charger turned out not to be working. I don't know what happened. It just wasn't charging the batteries. It was broken. So during that time while we were in Flagstaff, I had to go to a parts store. I purchased a NoCo Genius 5, which is an absolutely awesome product. And if you're considering a trickle charger of any kind, I would highly recommend it. I will put that in the link in the description. It will charge both of these 200 or 100 amp hour batteries, the total 200 amp hours, in about 18 hours from a traditional 110 outlet. Now, this is a 110 outlet, but it does not have the continuous power that a wall charger would have in a home. So it did not power them and I wasn't driving for 18 hours at a clip, so that probably plays a big part in it. But because that first trickle charger did not work, I had to purchase an additional one. Now, another way we were using to charge this battery bank was a Ram Power's 100 watt flexible solar panel. That solar panel is a monster and it works really well. I'm totally happy with it. I actually have it charging right now just to see how much power is coming in off the sun, and we're kind of on a cloudy day here in Ohio. But those were the two means that I had to charge this system. And all of that would have worked fine had I not been running this refrigerator off of AC power for so long. Obviously, you know the desert is really hot. The back of the truck with this black RSI smart cap, it also gets really warm in there. So that refrigerator was constantly running and just killing my batteries. So we are going to be installing a DC plug for the refrigerator. That should help out tremendously with that conversion process, eliminating that entirely and allowing this refrigerator to run without any issues. Now, the trickle charger from the NoCo Genius 5 is only a 5 amp trickle charger. So 5 amps on 100 amp hour lithium or 200 amp hour lithium ion phosphate setup is not providing much, if anything. It does give you something, and it will keep you topped off if you're not drawing a large amount of power. And the 100 watt flexible solar panel from Ram Power's is great. It's a fantastic panel, but it does not work when I'm driving, obviously, because it is outside of the vehicle. I must be stationary in order to use it. So what we've done is we've purchased a flexible solar panel that I am going to be installing on top of the iCamper, and I will be running those connectors in through the smart cap, and I will always have, as long as I have sun, I will always have roughly 60, 70, 80 watts of power coming in to keep those batteries charged. On top of the NoCo Genius 5, it should be enough. In the event that it's not, what I'm thinking about and what I purchased, it's just a matter of installing it, is a 20 amp DC to DC charger from Renogy. Now, that charger will run right off of my main battery. It'll be in the back with the rest of my components, and it will charge 20 amps off of my main battery into the battery bank. So I no longer feel that I'm going to have any of those issues. Even if I have to convert that DC to AC to run the refrigerator, I still don't think I'm going to have the issues that I had previously. Now, the components that we're using, in order to build the boxes for the battery bank as well as the water, what I did is I just purchased 80/20 aluminum extrusion off of Amazon, and I built a rectangular box. I have a video on the box that I built, and I'll put that up here. So if you're interested in the 80/20 process and how that works, how you can build your own little spot for your battery and your water system, that's an awesome way to do it. But in building it, I built it outside of the truck before I had the batteries. I was guessing on the battery size, so everything is extremely compact. Coming off of that, all that power goes into a relay, which goes into a master switch, which goes into a breaker, which goes into a master switch. And then I have a Renogy Wanderer charge controller, and I also have a Renogy 1000 watt inverter. Now the inverter runs all of my AC power, which is just 2 outlets and 2 USB ports. I do have an additional 2 outlets that I am going to install now that I kind of have my hands around how this process works. And in order to flip my inverter on, the Renogy inverter comes with this plate with a button, and I can flip the inverter on when I need to convert to AC power. If I'm charging my drone batteries, my camera batteries, cell phones, all of that stuff, I can convert that to AC power, and I can charge all those up. Now, the system itself is relatively simple, and it wasn't hard to install, but in order to get all of your components to fit properly, that was my biggest issue. And what I have to run my water tank as well as my air compressor is a really cheap Bluetooth wireless controller that I purchased off of Alibaba. It was about 70 bucks. And my water tank pump, my water pump, as well as my air compressor to air up the tires, is all ran off of that battery bank through this Bluetooth remote. And this Bluetooth remote just sticks on the back of my fridge, and I can get to it when I need it, turn it on and off, and it runs all of my water. Now, the 20-gallon water tank that we purchased is strictly from Amazon. I think I paid 120 bucks. I don't know. I'll put the link in the description. And it comes with all the components that you need: your fill ports, your in and your out, your vent port. All of that is already there, and it gives you all the components to attach everything. So what I did is I ran my water through high density hose. I didn't use PEX. I did purchase PEX, but I didn't end up using it because I just feel that it was unnecessary. The pump I have is too powerful for the attachments. So here I have water on, and here I have drain. And once I turn my pump on, it brings the water out. I just basically made a hose that I can screw in to this, and it allows the water to come out. But the pressure is too big, or it's too much pressure. So I have to downsize my pump to like a 1.5 gallon water pump versus, I think it's a 3.5 gallon or a 5 gallon per minute water pump. It's just too much. I don't need it. And one thing that you're going to run into is your water pump having too much pressure is going to consume your water much quicker. So you want that fine balance where you have good water pressure, but you also have you're consciously consuming the amount of water that you think you're consuming, because there's nothing worse than turning your pump on and there not being any water because you are using so much water to do very small tasks. So that's the battery system. It's a relatively simple, I'm not going to say caveman system, but it is not hard to do. There are tons of YouTube videos, and if you would like a more in-depth video about how I installed everything, I'll be happy to do that. But today we're just going to kind of go over the overview. Now that we have the water system and the battery system taken care of, those are the two biggest components. We're going to move on to how I built the drawer boxes, what is in them, the slides that I used, and how I made all of this work to have a sleeping platform up on top of the drawer boxes. Building all of the drawer boxes was not difficult whatsoever. I did not have a table saw. All I had was a DeWalt miter saw, as well as a circular saw and an oscillator, just standard tools that most people have in their garage. Now, that being said, it's not perfect. And I know that it's not perfect. I did have to sand down some edges to make everything fit, but the base of this entire project was around Baltic birch plywood. I had to purchase Baltic birch plywood from Menards online. Nobody really carries it where you can just go pick up a couple of sheets. So we ordered 2 sheets of 4x8, 3/4 inch thick Baltic birch plywood. The reason I went with Baltic birch was because my teardrop camper is built out of all Baltic birch plywood, and it is a very solid 7-ply plywood, and it finishes very nicely as well. So you could probably see the finish of it is all sanded, all sealed, and it's all weather tight for the most part. And in building it, I knew I needed rectangular boxes, and how I was going to use it based on the knowledge that I have from traveling in the past and all the trips that we've been on. I knew the basics of what I was going to need. I knew I was going to need additional storage for mountain bike gear, for our foldable table, camp chairs, you know, all the miscellaneous stuff that you probably travel with as well. And I know I needed to have my kitchen system out here as close as I could, because I can also use the tailgate in addition to everything that I have here. So I was able to build multiple slides within this unit. Up top is all of my dishes. Everything that we use, our camp stove is up there. We have our pots and pans, bowls, plates, miscellaneous spices, and all of that is in the top drawer. The second drawer is a slide out that we can use to set the camp stove on. And beneath that, we have a custom made, this is my favorite part of the whole build, my wife made this butcher block cutting board. And to the right of that, we have a collapsible sink that I can also pull out. So all of this, it took some time to come up with the perfect setup, because once you build your drawer boxes, the space that you have is the space that you have. There is no additional space that you can really make up, so you have to get creative with how you use the different levels, and this is what we came up with. Back behind the kitchen system, we have a big storage bin, essentially. And the one thing that I've learned from having the Gladiator and having the deck system, the issue that I ran into with the deck system is it was only so tall. So I could not stack a bunch of stuff in there. It was hard to get everything to fit. We made do with it, but I knew when I built this, I wanted to have enough space to stack things up tall-wise, because I built this side specifically large enough to fit my daughter's pack and play. Because a pack and play is a big rectangular item, it fits in there perfectly, but in the deck system, I wasn't able to fit a pack and play. So I have my pack and play, and then we set the camp table on top of that. We can fit our small camp chairs in there. I can fit my propane tank. Everything fits in this relatively well. Would I like to have more space? Yes. You could always use more space, but a lot of the space that you have, and something you will learn if you've never lived out of a vehicle for any extensive period of time, is that a lot of the stuff you bring, you don't even use and you don't need. I still bring so much additional stuff on those what if scenarios, if I need them, or maybe this will happen. And yes, if it happens, I will have that, but I'm also bogged down with a bunch of additional stuff. So that's besides the point, but just something to keep in mind when you're building this. Try to create and build your overland rig for what you need. Now, everything is 3/4. All the plywood is built together with pocket holes, and then I also use wood glue to create a seal. So that is the first side of our custom drawer system and what we use it for and how it works for us. So once the drawer boxes were built, I knew I needed to have some sort of slide in order to get them out. And the slides do become relatively expensive. I got 50-inch drawer slides off of Amazon. I had to wait for them to get here for a while, and then they sent me the wrong ones originally, so I had to return those. So it kind of really slowed down the process, and those drawer slides are rated for 400 pounds. So these slides slide all the way out, and then the way I built it, it rests right on the edge of the tailgate. So all that pressure really isn't even on the slide, it's right here on the tailgate. And the reason I did that was because I understand that the slides are strong, but it was not, I did not feel comfortable just pulling that slide out and just letting it hang there. I don't know why. I probably could have and I would have been fine. Now to attach the slides, I use construction screws to go into the birch plywood. And I am so surprised at how well that has held up, because we were on some pretty tough terrain and we were not taking it easy whatsoever. And I was concerned that one of these drawers was gonna bust loose. And that's just because I was maybe being paranoid. I used a lot of screws. I took up every single hole in the slides to make sure that I had as much strength in there as possible. Now, the slides, mounting them to the truck. In order to mount your slides to the truck, what I did was I put a 1/2-inch piece of birch plywood underneath a piece of 2-inch angled aluminum. And I bolted the angled aluminum through the birch plywood into the bed of the truck. Now, a lot of people probably don't want to drill into their truck, but I knew when I was doing this, holes in my truck was something that I could not avoid. Now, I would highly recommend you use some type of anti-rust paint or Rust-Oleum to spray over those holes top and bottom so you can prevent any type of rust issues from occurring down the line. We live in Ohio, our winters are terrible, tons of salt, and I know that that will rust if I did not use some type of paint to cover those that bare metal up. Now, it works fine. It works fantastic. I'm super happy with it, but building something like this in your truck does require you to drill through it, and if you're not comfortable with that, then I wouldn't even go any further in the video. But using the 3/8 inch angled aluminum, I was able to sit the slide flush on that piece of aluminum, so I didn't have to worry about getting anything perfectly level because everything was level with the bed of the truck. And I spaced them out based on, you have those rivets in the bed of your truck. Based on those rivets, how wide I wanted these drawers to be was based on where I was going to be mounting the angled aluminum into the bed. So far, so good. Everything has worked absolutely flawlessly. What I used to connect the angled aluminum to the bed of the truck was just riv nuts. I purchased a pack of riv nuts off of Amazon, drilled my holes per the specification on the riv nuts, put the riv nuts in, tightened them down, they compressed on themselves, and everything has held up fantastic. I absolutely love this setup. I do want to make some changes, but for the most part, everything with the drawer slides has been absolutely perfect. Now, if we move over to the refrigerator slide, all you have to do is press down on these little yellow tabs and you're able to pull this out. And I'm able to pull my fridge out the entire way. And then back here, what we have is another storage space. And this is where I keep my mountain bike gear, all the stuff that I'm going to need to get to. This is much smaller, and I wish I would have made this bigger, but I had to compensate for how big my refrigerator was. And one thing that I messed up when I was measuring for the height of everything so I could build the platform, I had to make sure that I was able to cover this up because I wanted my platform to go completely across the entire top so you can throw additional gear in there. My son can sleep in there. He has a big, nice sleeping area. That was the intent. But because I mismeasured and didn't take into account how far these drawer slides would be mounted up off of the bed, this is a little bit too tall. So I had to leave everything open, but it'll make it for a good demonstration so I can show you how I used 80/20 aluminum to build the top bed system. So I'm trying to run from my neighbor who is mowing their grass during the video. It happens every single Saturday. But the bed system. Now, if you guys have never used 80/20 aluminum, it is an extremely easy product to build out of. And the 80/20 aluminum all connects together through various different connectors that you can purchase online, you can purchase on Amazon. But what I decided to do is use 1/4-20s. So I use 1/4-20 bolts with nylock washers, nylock nuts, and everything tightened up really well, because my biggest concern was the vibration and eventually something coming loose and possibly falling apart while we're in the middle of nowhere and I don't have access to the tools I would need in order to rebuild a drawer or rebuild a piece of the structural component. Now, the smart cap, the way the smart cap clamps to the truck, it just has 2 C-clamps or 3 C-clamps on either side, and it compresses the smart cap to the truck, the bed rails. Well, those were in my way. So a lot of people will probably gasp, but what I did was took those out and I drilled holes directly up through my bed rails into the smart cap, and then I used a 5/16 bolt to clamp everything down, and those have held up absolutely perfectly, and it makes everything cleaner so I can do what I could do what I needed to do. Now, there is a lip that hangs down on the RSI smart cap, and what I did was drilled holes and did use 1/4-20s again to connect angled aluminum, a 3/8 inch angled aluminum to the side rails of the RSI smart cap, and that is what I laid my 80/20 aluminum across, and then bolted that through the angle coming off of the RSI smart cap. So that was basically the bed platform system. That's how I built the platform up top. Now, for the middle, I knew I needed some type of structural support for the middle. Otherwise, when somebody's laying up there, it would have just started sagging. So what I did is, again, I used 80/20 aluminum and basically just put bars going down as middle supports all the way down the center of the truck. And that provided us structural integrity for the middle of the platform system. So when somebody's laying up there or we have a bunch of gear there, we're not getting a bow and we're not adding unnecessary stress to the 80/20 aluminum and the whole platform system itself. From there, it was just about trying to figure out how I was going to get the right angles and the right cuts for the platform itself. And that proved to be extremely difficult. I used 1/2 inch birch plywood on top for the bed system. And my original design was to have a perfectly flush bed, that the bed system up top that would have fit to all the angles, and I was going to do all the cuts, but it wasn't lining up perfectly, and I was getting down to the wire. That was obviously the last thing I was doing, was trying to get that platform system set up. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to get it perfect, but I did get it to the point to where I could use self-tapping screws to go through the birch plywood into the 80/20 extruded aluminum, and that held that wood down perfectly. So I actually really like it now, but I hated it in the moment because I spent so much time and effort. I wanted this to be absolutely perfect, and it's not absolutely perfect. It's a little off center. So what I had to do is I covered it with a rubber flooring that I got from Lowe's. It's just a 1/4 inch rubber flooring that just provided some additional padding for up top, so the wood wasn't getting destroyed, and if it got wet, it wasn't going to destroy the wood or make it rot. And then I put a piece of angled aluminum on the exterior edge so I could just finish off that exterior edge the best that I could to give it a nice clean finished look. My intention was to do the same thing on the other side, but because I had to get into the batteries and get out of the batteries so often, I'm really glad that I didn't add another piece to that spot, because I was not ready, and I'm still not ready to finalize it and make it capped off completely. When I'm out, I don't have all the tools that I have at home, so it makes it hard to get to the pieces of our system that I may need to get to. And luckily, everything worked out the exact way it was supposed to, because I did have to mess with these batteries a ton on our trip. And now that I got everything situated and dialed in, I'm feeling much more comfortable. But that is how I built the top platform system for the sleeping space, as well as for additional gear out of 80/20 extruded aluminum. Now, the final question that everyone probably has is, how much did it cost? And to build this entire setup, the sleeping platform, both drawer systems, all the slides, all the screws, it just under $2,000. I think it was like $1,980 something to build a complete custom camper build for your truck. Obviously, Nothing's perfect. You could purchase something from a company that's going to cost you a lot more, but the fit and finish is going to be better. If you're anything like me and you love to build stuff and try to figure things out, then this is an awesome project for you to take on. Just know that you're going to have to drill through your truck, and if that doesn't bother you, then you're in good shape. But everything that we've done for this vehicle so far has worked extremely well. We're definitely happy with it, but all that being said, I'm changing everything. Now that I've had my hands on it, now that I know how it performs, now that I know what we can do with and do without, I'm going to be changing this entire camper setup to something different, and those videos will be coming before too long, as long as I can get some time to really get into another project of this size. So thanks guys for watching. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them down below. I will get to them. I usually do that every single morning. Until next time, I'll see you guys on the next one.